The tale begins with a man named Jed, a humble mountaineer who barely managed to keep his family fed. One ordinary afternoon, while he was out in the woods shooting at some game to provide a meal, his rifle struck the earth and brought forth a bubbling, dark liquid. It was black gold, Texas tea. Before anyone truly understood what was happening, the man known as Jed became a millionaire overnight. His kinfolk insisted that he must move away from the wilderness. They told him that California was the only place a man of his new stature ought to be. Consequently, they loaded up the old truck and moved to Beverly. The hills of Beverly, that is, a place filled with swimming pools and movie stars. They became known as the Beverly Hillbillies. One morning at the mansion, a woman named Miss Walsh arrived. She greeted the room and explained that she had some important papers for Mr. Drysdale. She wondered aloud if the family was still up at the Clampett residence. She noted that they had returned to the hills, and the chief had foolishly agreed to take care of the house, Jethro, and all of the critters. When asked what critters were, she explained that it was hill talk for animals. Shortly after, the chief walked in, wondering how everything was faring at the mansion. He corrected himself, noting that the place was more of a menagerie than a mansion, making the zoo look modest in comparison. Inside the kitchen, there was quite a commotion. Someone mentioned that they had just provided a stack of pancakes to a mutton, which sounded suspiciously like Jethro, but the truth was that it was the bear. The confusion grew as they realized they were cooking pancakes for the bear, assuming that was the one thing everyone could agree on. However, Miss Hathaway offered a correction, noting that at least one of them certainly did not care for pancakes. She urged Jed to get her on a plane to the hills immediately because she felt compelled to bring the Clampetts back to the city. Meanwhile, back in the hills, Jed noticed that folks were beginning to gather for the annual fair. He inquired about the whereabouts of Ellie Mae, curious why she had not yet appeared. It was revealed that there was to be a cake baking contest for all of the single girls, and the single fellow who was going to judge the competition was the man she was interested in. Jed expressed his concern, knowing full well that Ellie Mae was a rather miserable cook. He felt it was his duty to make sure she did not enter the contest. Ellie Mae, however, had other plans. She informed her father that she had already entered the contest the previous day. She explained that she had baked the cake the night before when the air was cool, and all she had left to do was decorate it. She had also entered herself into the basket weaving, post-hole digging, and barn-raising contests. Jed turned to his family, wondering what they were going to do about that cake. Someone suggested that the mother contest might help them, proposing that they could hide it in her basket, bury it in the post hole, or perhaps raise a barn over it to keep it out of sight. As the day progressed, Alberna arrived, and Granny greeted her with a sharp tongue. Alberna was wearing a hat she had made herself, which looked so peculiar that Granny remarked she had thought the girl's hair was on fire. Shortly after, Mr. Kellens was approached by a woman looking for a suitable place to hold her daughter's wedding reception. She inquired if the dining room was available. Mr. Kellens confirmed it was a dandy of a room, capable of accommodating 12 people sitting at the table, or 20 if they chose to eat standing up. The woman asked about a buffet, but then shifted the conversation to decorations, specifically asking for live white doves to sit around billing and cooing. Mr. Kellens, being a practical man, suggested that if live birds were truly what she wanted, he could provide her with purple martins, noting that they would not only bill and coo but would also keep the bugs away. Miss Bradshaw then appeared, looking for a broom. She explained that she had dropped her cake on the kitchen table and it had shattered into many little pieces. Ellie Mae felt sorry for her, but Miss Bradshaw clarified that the cake was actually fine. It was just the table she needed to sweep up. The tension between the women was palpable. While Ellie Mae was struggling with her culinary efforts, others boasted that their own daughters were wizards in the kitchen and divinely attractive. Arguments broke out between the ladies, with insults flying back and forth about wrinkles and aging. Jed tried to maintain the peace, suggesting that they all head over to the pavilion for the opening square dance. The fair officially commenced with a lively square dance. Ellie Mae took charge, calling out the steps, encouraging everyone to swing, whirl, and shake a leg. The atmosphere was filled with music and laughter. Once the festivities were underway, Granny was determined to help Ellie Mae find a husband. However, She was distracted by a bizarre situation involving a gorilla suit. Jed asked her about it, and she explained the law of the jungle and the survival of the fittest. She was looking after a bear, a mountain lion, a chimpanzee, and other assorted wild animals, and she had to scare them to ensure she could eat. Jed spoke to the folks back at the bank and received mixed news. Granny was adamant that they were not coming back to Beverly Hills. She intended to stay in the hills until Ellie Mae was married and settled down. She even requested that the family's $85 million be sent to them. As the crowd at the fair grew, it seemed as if the entire county was in attendance. There were hundreds of people milling about. Jed searched for Ellie Mae and Granny, hoping he might finally get rid of that cake. He discovered that Ellie Mae had already rolled the cake out of the kitchen area hours ago. It was a massive creation, decorated with her name written in large letters across the top. Despite his worries, he hoped that her beauty would convince some young fellow to bid on the cake, provided he did not actually try to eat it. They eventually found Ellie Mae weaving a basket. A stranger approached, struck by her beauty and talent, and asked if she was married. When she replied that she was not, the stranger was astonished, remarking that the single men in the area must be weak-eyed. The stranger tried to introduce the beautiful blonde girl to the eligible bachelors, but the situation became comedic when the stranger realized he was talking to Jed Clampett's daughter. The event continued with various displays of talent. Ellie Mae was praised for her candle making, and a crowd gathered around, amazed that such a beautiful and wealthy girl was still single. Granny took every opportunity to show off her granddaughter, acting as if she were a prize exhibit. Jed felt a bit overwhelmed by the attention, but he remained the kind, understanding man he had always been. Granny, meanwhile, had promised to help Chick Allen sell his mountain medicine, including his herbs, roots, berries, and elixirs. She was proud of her role as a self-proclaimed doctor and was eager to lend her professional endorsement. Jed agreed to let her help Chick, but only on the condition that she sell nothing else. Granny gave her word of honor, praising Jed as a noble human being and a saint among men. Chick Allen's show was a highlight of the fair. He was presented as a famous specialist and a living testimonial to the health-giving powers of his own potions. To demonstrate his new magic mud pack, he asked for a volunteer from the audience. Granny, always ready to jump into the spotlight, stepped forward. Chick applied the mud to her face and declared that she was a magnificent creature, noting that he had never seen such a beautiful complexion in all his 70 years of practice. The fair continued to be a place of joy, laughter, and community spirit. While there were small rivalries and eccentric characters, the underlying theme was one of family, simple pleasures, and the warmth of the mountain folk. Ellie Mae, despite her unconventional cooking skills, was the belle of the ball, and the Clampett family found themselves at the center of the local culture, enjoying every moment of their return to their roots. As the sun set on the fairgrounds, there was a sense of contentment in the air, a reminder that while money and fame were part of their lives in Beverly Hills, the true treasure was the happiness they found together in the hills.